Genuinely shocking or tasteless, campy fun, it was sometimes hard to tell which way the Misfits wanted to be taken, and the immense cult following that has grown up in the years after their actual existence seems divided in its own assessment. It certainly wasn't the Misfits' musicianship, which was as crude as the recording quality of most of their oeuvre, that endeared them to so many, although Glenn Danzig possessed one of the most distinctive and tuneful bellows in hardcore punk. Rather, it was Danzig's penchant for catchy, anthemic melodies, often delivered at warp speed, and his lyrical obsession with grade B horror films and splatter imagery that helped the Misfits build a rabid posthumous following. Name drops and covers by metal bands like Metallica and Guns N' Roses kept the Misfits songs circulating during the mid to late 80s, when their tangled discography remained only sporadically in print, reissues were maddeningly incomplete, and much of the band's prime material was confined to rare singles and EPs. The mid-90s saw a spate of CD reissues that, while not quite presenting all of the Misfits songs in the most concise, collectible format, at least succeeded in getting them all back into print, allowing those who missed the band the first time around to hear why they've enjoyed such enduring cult popularity. However, here are some facts about Misfits. A lucky break got the Misfits free studio time. Released on Glenn Danzig's label Blank Records, Cough Cool was limited to a modest pressing of 500 copies. Still, the short run was enough to attract the attention of a major label, but not in the way that Danzig and the Misfits might have hoped. According to American Hardcore: A Tribal History, Mercury Records wanted Blank as an indie imprint and were willing to make a deal to get it. In exchange for 30 hours of studio time, the Misfits gave up Blank Records and rechristened their label Plan 9 in a nod to Ed Wood's infamous movie. In early 1978, the Misfits, consisting of Danzig, Jerry Caifa, drummer Jim Catania, and guitarist Frank Licata, entered the studio to record what they intended to be their debut album Static Age. Over the course of 20 hours, the band recorded 17 songs, including early versions of Teenagers from Mars, Hybrid Moments, and Last Caress. However, the band was unable to generate studio interest in the album. Danzig would wind up releasing many of the recordings as singles, and EP's Static Age was at last released in 1996 as part of the Misfits box set, followed by a 1997 standalone release featuring newly mixed versions of She, Spinal Remains, and The Rarity in the Doorway. A disastrous tour of England nearly ends the Misfits. As documented by Misfits Central, the Misfits opened for British punk band The Damned at a New York club called Hurrah in June of 1979. Prior to taking the stage, Misfits bassist Jerry only discussed the possibility of opening for The Damned on a United Kingdom tour with the band's vocalist Dave Vanian. From this point, the details of the Misfits' ill-fated tour of Britain become somewhat murky. According to American Hardcore, Glenn Danzig only booked the tour through England's Musicians Union and received a contract outlining tour dates and pay from the Damned's manager. On November 21, 1979, the Misfits arrived in England. Only went to Vanian's home to work out some final details. The visit came as a complete surprise to Vanian, who hadn't taken Only's offer seriously. Compounding the confusion, Only had neglected to sign the contracts drawn up by the Damned's management. The Misfits were hurriedly added to the Damned's tour, but frustration over lack of pay, likely stemming from the unsigned contracts, and frustration with rented gear led the band to quit after one show. Stranded in England and surviving on Only's father's credit cards, the Misfits nearly fractured. Drummer Joey Image booked a flight back to the United States, effectively quitting the band. While Only went sightseeing with the late Sid Vicious mother, Bobby Steele and Danzig landed in jail after a violent confrontation, allegedly with local skinheads. Their two-night stay in London's Brixton jail was immortalized by Danzig in the Misfits song London Dungeon. The Misfits Go Hardcore with Earth AD Wolf's Blood. The Misfits finally recorded a full-length debut album in 1981. Released in 1982, Walk Among Us featured the lineup of Glenn Danzig, Doyle, Jerry Only, and new drummer Arthur Googie. Considered by many as the definitive Misfits album, Walk Among Us represents the pinnacle of the band's melodic horror punk style. Their next album would mark a near-total change in direction. Featuring a hardcore sound in the vein of Black Flag and Bad Brains, Earth AD was initially met with a tepid response from critics and fans. Although it has since come to be considered a classic, Many originally felt that the band was merely jumping on the hardcore bandwagon. As documented in This Music Leaves Stains the complete story of the Misfits, longtime fans disliked the new sound. "You know, I believed them before that," said Ian MacKaye of the pioneering hardcore band Minor Threat. "The music was something coming out of deep expression. Earth AD I felt was just too fast." According to American Hardcore, Danzig is no fan of the Misfits' final album. "I didn't like Earth AD at all," Danzig said. "The songs were played too fast, and the album ended up sounding like one long song. That's because the guys in the band couldn't play." Danzig acknowledges Earth AD influence. "A lot of people swear by that album, it's like their Bible, but I prefer our other material." The end of the Misfits' classic era. The last incarnation of the original Misfits played their last show on October 29, 1983, at Detroit's Greystone Hall. In the months before, the band had lost 2 more drummers. Arthur Googie quit over an alleged altercation after ordering 2 cheeseburgers on a tour stop, an offense that angered budget-conscious Glenn Danzig. Ex-Black Flag drummer Robo took over in time to record Earth AD. Robo, who had been booted from the KF's home, moved in with Danzig. Unable to get along with the temperamental singer, Robo soon quit. With a Halloween show and a tour of Germany looming, the Misfits were once again in search of a drummer. As recounted in This Music Leaves Stains, Jerry only contacted Googie about returning to the band. When Danzig discovered Only's overtures to their ex-drummer, he vetoed the idea. Instead, he recruited Brian Damage Keats of the band Genocide. Damage's performance at the Detroit Halloween show was a disaster. The drummer, suffering from a case of frayed nerves, began drinking before the show. By the time the band hit the stage, Damage was too inebriated to play and was tossed off stage by an incensed Doyle. Todd Swalla of the Necros filled in for the remainder of the night. At the show's end, Danzig announced that the Misfits were over. Demoralized, the band shared a tense van ride back to New Jersey. Danzig wouldn't speak with Doyle and Only again for decades.